Welcome to How Do We Rise? Step 2. Do your inner work of healing yourself. As I've been saying for a very long period of time, that there is no ability to change the world if we're looking outside of ourselves to be the change. If we're looking at the world as if it has to change as opposed to our having to change, then we're looking at this upside down, and we're looking at it with cognitive dissonance. The ultimate goal is that the world will change. We want the world to change. But the question is, how do we change the world when most of the people are asleep and don't want to wake up? Most of the people believe in reality TV as truthful. That most of the people believe in government, most of the people believe in allopathic medicine, most of the people are following religions, most of the people are willing to harm others in order to achieve their goals. Most of the people are operating out of a very clear narcissism, and most of the people would let anybody die at any point in any way, not caring about what's going on, because we have gotten so dulled out by the absolute tyranny in which we've been living in. So we no longer can hear the words, this person is starving, or this person was beaten, or this war is going on, or this bomb was set off, or, this child was abducted. We're getting to the point that we are so numbed out to the horror in order to cope, in order to survive, that we're actually moving into a frequency of clear narcissism, self-involvement, self-protection, and the inability to see others with compassion and with empathy. So we then believe somehow that somebody outside of ourselves, somebody that is in a leadership position, somebody who's in the military, somebody who is of authority, who is more intelligent or more courageous or stronger or more knowledgeable, etc., they are going to be the change that's going to alter the insanity that's going on in the world. We believe that something outside of us, some extraterrestrial alien, or some government in and of itself, or a Messiah, a God, is all going to come in and going to be our savior, is going to be what is changing all of this. But the reality is that that's not what's going to happen. And from our point of view, from living in our era of many decades and many generations before us, and the rewriting of history, we only see that this is the only way humans have been. And so we believe that that's always how it's going to be. Like we have always been, and therefore we always shall be, and we've always been this way. Those who believe in evolution will look at it and say, well, millions and millions and billions and trillions and gazillions of years ago, we were apes. There are a lot of people that don't believe in evolution in terms of us rising up out of apes. I, for one, don't believe in that truth myself. That being said, I do believe that we once were humans that were much more compliant and dumbed down and stronger in our muscles, stronger in our bones, stronger in our body, maybe even giants or larger than we are, and but intellectually inferior to what we have become. And I do believe that we have been changed and reset, making old models obsolete and creating new models based on the whims of that which we call leaders in the world. Leaders that are not of a human nature, that provide us governments and provide us homes and provide us clothing and provide us food all that we have to pay for, which is ironically free. Everything that we will ever need, the earth has for us to utilize and create for ourselves, free out of the abundance of nature. So we are paying the elites to allow us to live on this planet after they allow us to do hard labor for their world and their systems. So what has happened over the many millennia of human beings, constantly being reset and altered and changed and controlled and enslaved, terrorized, traumatized, wounded by the sadistic players that live as our authority, authority being authoring our scripts, authoring our lives, authoring our systems and the world at large. They are writing the scripts. So we all have become very traumatized just by being alive, by being born into hospital settings where you're immediately brought out under fluorescent lights with the doctor with a light over his forehead, beaming right at you, turning you upside down, spanking you, hitting you, poking you, prodding you, needling you, giving you vaccines, rubbing off all the protective film, not giving you to your mother who you were born from. Just the immediate trauma of most of us who are born into this world, and then all the systemic trauma that happens by being raised in families that haven't done their inner healing work, who are very unwell mentally, very unwell physically, emotionally, who are operating out of false spirituality or false religion, dads who work outside the home, never paying attention, so there's this abandonment, neglect issue, moms living inside the home, maybe unhappy, parents that are unhappy, came from dysfunctional families, taking it out on the children, leaving the children to be latchkey children. The school system alone that operates out of you do as I say and I will reward you with grades that will make your parents happy. Don't do as I say and I will then give you consequences of poor grades. We're going to lock you up in a room for 6 to 8 hours. We're not going to let you out. We're going to feed you toxic, very GMO'd out, salted, sugary foods. We're going to offer you cupcakes and all sorts of sugar so you can bounce for the rest of the day in your seat, losing your mind. Then you're going to go home on buses to homes that are empty because women are now at work, and so are the men. So moms and dads are gone. Or they're at home drinking, or they're at home drugging, or they're at home. Maybe they're a nice family, and you got lucky, but that's a rarity anymore. And then, of course, you have to deal with all the other pressures of society and getting a job by the time you're 16 and paying taxes and learning that you are just a slave. You look forward to things. You look forward to getting your driver's license and your permit and your prom and going to college or going out to work, getting your first apartment, having your first boyfriend, girlfriend, getting married, having a wedding. But when you really step back and you look at everything that is a part of the daily play of our lives, essentially, school is just an indoctrination program where you are part of the state system, you're part of the federal system, you are having to use your birth certification, you're having to use your social security card, you're having to get vaccinations in order to be in the school, you're being controlled, you're being manipulated, you're being brainwashed with false history and false teachings, and then you're just being geared to want to drive so you have freedom, so you're paying more, you're buying more, going to college where again you're still going to be indoctrinated. It doesn't matter if you go out and drink and do drugs there, if you're a great student there. Money is money. You're feeding, we're feeding the system just so you can leave college, in severe debt, to go out to work, to slave your life away, to pay off the debt, still buy the house, to pay the debt, buy the car, pay the debt, always in debt, always seeking, always wanting more, always trying to achieve, and just never really getting out from under it, most people. And so by the very nature of living in this world, and everything kind of being very synthetic, right? Our housings are really, our housing is just very toxic. It's very unnatural to live in square boxes. It's very unnatural to live in plasterboard and fiberglass and wiring and electromagnetic frequencies. These are up off the ground on foundations that are built with cement, so you're not getting, the earth inside your home. You're not getting that vibration. And, driving in automobiles that are made of formaldehyde and putting on clothing that's really toxic and using products that are all bought off a shelf and washed in a washing machine, just in the dryer, and you're just breathing in all this toxic air. And everything is just really geared for the failure of humanity. It's really geared for the constant constraints and the constant desperation that starts to fill all of us. And I now that I'm 58 years old, I think about, that middle-aged, angst that happens. You have your teenage angst, and then you have your middle-aged angst, because generally what happens is that everything that you wanted to achieve and dream of when you're a child or a young adult, or you're moving through your 30s and you think you're accomplishing what you want, you suddenly realize that, wow, I'm in the middle of my life and I haven't done really much of anything that I wanted to do, because I maybe wanted to travel here, I wanted to do extreme sports, or I wanted to play in this, and I wanted to do that music, or all these different dreams that you had as a child, or you wanted to marry this person, and you wanted to date that person, all these different experiences, and you suddenly realize, wow, I bought into a system. I bought into the dream that was, okay, you get out of college and you get your first job and you get a little bit of money and you're doing a little bit okay, and then you meet that person, you got to get married, or you get somebody pregnant, and you want to buy the house, and you want to keep up with the Joneses and the Smiths and the Browns and the Whites and all sorts of things. And that's what you do. That's what you're buying into, until suddenly at 40 or 45 or 50, you turn around and you look and you go, wow, I did not take my dream vacation. I did not jump out of that airplane. I didn't do that whitewater rafting. I didn't buy the horses that I wanted to have. I didn't achieve. I didn't go to music school. I didn't really learn how to do the things with music that I wanted to do. Or I wanted to write the book, or I wanted to do the pieces of art that I wanted to work on. And I ended up having 5 children, and I only wanted 2. But that's just the way of life. And you just come to it all comes to a head, and just looking at yourself, going, wow, I missed out on so much because I was so far into the grind, right? So far into the grind. And so what happens, excuse me, I have a little puppy who's deciding to join in. Please forgive me. So what happens is you look back and you go, God, I'm feeling so empty now, because I bought into the system and I forgot about me. And that midlife crisis is that feeling that I forgot about me. And it's so deep and it's so intense, and you feel such a great desperation and depression. You're feeling like the bloom's off your rose, or the machismo's never is gone. And now you've got to figure out a way to fill in all those gaps, fill in all those empty spaces that you just gave away to other people. And so, you go out and you buy the beautiful car, or the sexy car, you have the affairs, you divorce the husband, you divorce the wife, you're done with the children, lots of things become, you change your career, so many decisions that you end up making are made based on a soul that feels deprived, feels impoverished by the very nature of losing a life to a system that is geared for you to pay only to be alive and to have a little bit of something, but you're still that hamster on the wheel. And oftentimes when you hit that midlife crisis, the sad thing is that instead of learning that we've invested in so much of the things that were not essential, and I'm not talking about your family or your children or your spouses, but I'm talking about all the other things, all the other pressures, and all the other parts of our lives that are set before us, oftentimes determined by excuse me, I'm killing flies, but determined by other people. who have their best interest at heart, not necessarily your best interest at heart, because your best interest at heart is finding your soul purpose and going into the world and living a soulful relationship with the planet and with the natural world and with your relationships around you in a very cohesive, very deeply involved, caring, growing, expanding way. Not sitting in an office from 9 to 5, just grinding in these cardboard little spaces for somebody else to make a shit ton of money. And so that's just your fundamental daily life of school and then health. Your health is becoming impaired by the stresses. Your health is becoming impaired by the foods you're eating, especially when you're younger. You're not able to invest in good food, so you eat McDonald's and that sort of thing. The vaccination program, all sorts of things that compromise the health. And then when you go out to have an adult life, many people, especially women, are having a lot of health problems. So then what you're experiencing is only your partial ability to live, because you're dealing with profound health concerns, autoimmune, autism, ADD, ADHD, and other cancer, and so on and so forth. So it's just a pot of, how do you walk through a minefield of life and trying to get through all of it, trying to be engaged and loving and good people of the world, and doing the right thing and living by certain moral codes. And then you're doing your best and you're trying to find yourself in all of this with all these different voices in your head, and still along the way things happen. Family members die prematurely, suddenly. Drugs, whether it's pharmaceutical or street drugs, are invasive in our society. We have pandemics, we have wars, we have global cooling, global warming, we've got, cold wars, and Russia's going to attack us and we're going to attack Russia. I mean, it's a constant state of chaos, crisis, and fear that the elitists place upon our lives just to keep us under control, manage us, and make us believe in all of these hoaxes and falsehoods in order to just continue to play their chess game, having fun and using us as pawns along the way. And then you have other elements in your lives where you have failures, where you didn't achieve, where you didn't know that maybe you had an underlying illness or an underlying cause, where the funny uncles, we used to call them back in my era, but now it's really very clear, pedophiles, pedosadists, constantly inside of our environments, harming us, rape, murder, being robbed, being traumatized, being terrorized, having the bully, having issues with your sexuality, uncertainty about that. Now the new, even though it's been around for a long time, but it's gaining momentum, is the transgendering, the body dysmorphia that is harming a lot of people now, mental health issues, the poisoning. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And it creates wounds, trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, lots of mental health disorders. It blows out the immune system. It sets us up for cancer. It sets us up for all sorts of different diseases that would not happen without trauma. So it's really important that we know that we need to do our inner work to heal ourselves. And being a person who has been doing her inner work her whole life, I ran away from home when I was 12 years old. I made myself a ward of the state because I came from a severely dysfunctional family. I knew that I didn't deserve it. I entered into various placements. I feel that I got lucky. I was not harmed in any of these placements. but I was still in placements, and I was part of the system for 4.5 years. And during that time, I did a lot of inner work on myself because I had a lot of wonderful people in front of me helping me along. So I really got lucky, even though I was a very wounded child, but at least I started doing my work. And then I went home for a couple of years, and it was traumatizing, severely traumatizing. And I ended up having my immune system, my endocrine system blow out after 3 very severe traumas with both my biological parents. And I recognized that I tried to do a lot of work. I went to a therapist, and I was 19 years old, and I just tried to do different work, but I had no money. But eventually, after my brother passed away when I was 22, another very severe trauma, I recognized that I was going to be very, very ill because I was dealing with vaccine fallout, vaccine toxicity. I was suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome, a thyroid deficiency, Epstein-Barr, all sorts of things, all that came from my vaccine at 9 years old. And I recognized that I needed to get help. And so I found a therapist, and I knew that I had to work on my body at the same time. So I found an acupuncturist, a world-renowned acupuncturist with a pretty good therapist. And I worked on both systems at the same time to heal myself up. And within about 1 year to 2 years, I had really come full circle into a beautiful place, feeling more empowered, having self-esteem again, dealing with traumas, forgiving, just doing some work. And I got lucky because I had an awareness that that's what needed to happen. And I took the incentive to work on myself. I also joined AA because I had a little bit of a drug problem with actually marijuana, believe it or not. I was quite addicted to it. And quit smoking, quit weed, just got myself in shape, exercised, got physically fit, got emotionally fit, and my life started to take off and change its trajectory from sorrow, bereavement, grief, depression, low self-esteem, being a doormat, not being able to stand up for myself whatsoever, and just feeling fundamentally lost in life and in pain, to taking charge of my life and ending up finding eventually a partner, a husband, having my daughter, and that sort of thing, and building a life for myself. Now, I used to think that what you had to do is you had to be in a long-term process. Like, depending on how messed up your family was, that was how long it was going to take for you to get better. Because that's what we're taught. We're taught everything is a long, enduring process, and you have to work very hard for everything, and you have to delve into the depths of this and delve into the depths of that and that sort of thing. And I lived thinking that. And so I too bought into the whole idea of process. And while I was doing all those wonderful things for myself, working out at the beach and, rollerblading and whitewater rafting and, having a boyfriend or boyfriends or whatever it was that I was doing and living my life, I also was reading tremendous amounts of self-help books and self-improvement and spiritual books and Course in Miracles. And, I just was feeding myself this whole bunch of pressure that I just had to feed my brain and feed my emotions and work through this and work through that and do this and do that. And I tell you, I learned as I got older that, wow, we really complicate things. And we really complicate things because everything is really complicated for us. We're taught that everything just takes so much time, and, we are inherently damaged and broken and beautiful, but you've got to find your way through the labyrinth, etc., etc., etc. And that's not true. And I'm going to discuss that. I'm going to discuss that with you. Now, I want to go back to the idea and the understanding that we cannot change any part of this world until we change ourselves. We can't change any part of this world until we change our relationships. And we certainly can't change anything until we change our reactions, our thoughts, our emotional baggage, the filters that we have that make us believe that the pain and the wounds or the traumas that we got that created the wounds are constantly and consistently still happening. And it doesn't matter if it's, Joe Schmo and then, Jane Blaine, whomever comes in our life, if we haven't healed those wounds, taps open our filters so that we can see our demons on other people. We consistently make new people in our lives pay for the sins of the people that first damaged our thoughts about ourselves, our feelings about ourselves, our self-esteem, our courage, our confidence, our happiness, our joy. So if we're walking around all in these festering, wounded packages of what we call a life, then what we're doing is we're perpetuating the world to stay in a very damaged system of control or out of control dynamic, or victim versus victimization dynamic, where our wounds and our traumas and our demons are actually in full operation, guiding, determining, and blaming the world and all those in it for something that happened to us when we were 2, or we were 5, or 15, or 25, or 35, whatever. So when I say that we cannot change any part of this world until we change ourselves, that's the reason why. Because there's 7.6 billion damaged people wounded by some of us with very severe trauma. All of us with at least one trauma to deal with. And we're walking around thinking we have to process for the rest of our lives. We walk around not wanting to process anything. We just want to move on with our lives and not deal with it anymore. But it comes out like battery acid, and it poisons the whole entire system. Or we do some work, but we don't complete it. And so we're still damaged people running around, and pretty much damaged children running around screaming at each other, or blaming, or guilting, or victimizing, or wanting to have control, or can't find control, or yelling at the wrong people, venting, so on and so forth. But then we want a world of peace. We want a world that's filled with love. We want a world that is filled with joy and harmony and serenity and all good things. And so then we have the people that overcompensate with, I'm always peace. I am a vegetarian. I am a pomegranate only eater. I om all day long. I run around the woods and I'm hugging trees and I'm telling people, only you can save yourself. Only I can take care of myself. We are islands. Go find yourself in the clouds. Completely ungrounded, literally mentally unhealthy, but trying to determine for all other people through ego and arrogance that if we om all day long underneath a tree, then we will find enlightenment. Meanwhile, some of these people are the most unenlightened people I've ever met. We hang on to and cleave to our religions, finding solace in Jesus or Allah or Buddha or the coming Messiah, instead of, or our priest or our preacher or a rabbi. Or we move and merge into a drug culture or a sex culture or gambling or any kind of addiction that's going to help assuage our suffering. And the reality is, all of it's toxic. We are living toxic lives. And so if you want a toxic world, then you're doing the right thing. Living a toxic life gives you a toxic world. But if you want the world to move away from toxicity and dysfunction and grasp a hold of love and be fed by love and be fed by beautiful prana and be fed by lovely life experiences and freedom and truth and honor and loyalty and stability and consistency and all sorts of wonderful qualities and emotions and experiences and expressions, then you and I and all of us have to be that which we want. And we have to cultivate that in our relationships. Even if our relationships are with our parents, just our parents or our children or our best friend or our friends or whatever. But our relationships have to be a mirrored example of a very healthy, functional, loving life. And in order to do that, we must work on our reactions. Our reaction is an immediate, display of negative energy without thought and without constructive meaning. We need to take reaction and move it to being in response, having the ability to respond in a way that allows character to not only be built, but to stay the course, holding where it's established. Responsibility, which most people defy and deny and rebel against, even into their 40s, even into their 60s, even into their 80s. Responsibility is only the ability to respond wisely, fully functional, healthfully, in a loving way with one another, with yourself, with events, and with your relationships. And how to change our reactions into responses is by managing with clarity and focus our thoughts. Holding our thoughts in a righteous, upright position, and I don't mean self-righteous. I mean in a position that allows us to see things clearly, to step back and say, that's their filter. They're not healed, and I'm going to love them. That's their filter. They're not healed, and I'm going to love them from a distance because this is really not healthy for me in an ongoing way. Making beautiful choices and choosing higher thoughts. And then by the higher thoughts, allowing our emotions to follow with higher frequency emotions. And I'm not saying don't feel negative emotions. I'm not saying that at all. Feel what you need to feel. Just don't wallow, don't stay in it, and learn how to let it go. Learn how to move through things, and pretty quickly, so you can gain your equilibrium once again. And to really work on how we're filtering things. Like, am I being abandoned right now? And if so, what's going on with myself and this person that I'm feeling abandoned right now? Or am I just feeling when my father abandoned me when I was, 4 years old? Is that what's coming up again? And without going into deep details and depth about it, acknowledge it, figure out where it's coming from. If it's from the past, again, just say, Dad, I forgive you. And I forgive myself for feeling so much pain. And I love myself and I honor myself. And I honor my father's decision to do what he did, because I'm sure he had a reason for himself. Whether it was good or bad or indifferent doesn't really matter. What matters is he felt he had a reason. And this is what I gained from my father not being around. I learned how to be more self-efficient. I learned to be more independent. I had more compassion towards my mother. I was able to help my mother. I learned a skill set. And there's so many things that come from the experiences that are positive if we look at the positive, if we nurture the positive. So we have to reckon with our own demons, and we need to stop splaying them onto all other people, because they have their own demons. They don't need ours. Okay? So often enough, Healing ourselves is really about gaining insight and clarity with having a very non-defensive position and keeping an openness while you're looking at yourself with real compassion, and then choosing to rise higher than any negatively charged behavior. So it's about gaining that insight and that clarity without defending it, without judging it, without ridiculing it, without criticizing it, just gaining clarity and being open to all the wonderful possibilities and all the wonderful learnings and everything that came of it that was positive. And then instead of operating out of anything negative, rise higher than that negative emotional reaction, that negative emotional feeling, the negative thoughts that come along with, being abused or having trauma, whatever. So rising higher than anything that is negatively charged, whether it's thoughts, feelings, or behavior. And that's key. And so what happens is when we are traumatized, when we are wounded, we begin to build armor. We begin to build buffers. We begin to build all these places where we hold people at bay. We are either we're more remote and introverted, or we're very gregarious and extroverted. Some people, for instance, become with a rape or a molestation, people will become very frigid and very frightened and shut their bodies down, shut their hearts down. Other people become this open display of sexual freedom to the point of conquest. Whatever polarity or whatever presentation of the trauma, you can always find ego in the middle of it. It's the ego that creates all of the skin, all of those calluses that pushes back against the pain, against the fear, against the woundedness. And at the top of the ego line always generally is pride. So in trying to find a healthy life, we obscure all of that by having out of control egos, pride, and control, and procrastination, and all different forms of actually the 7 deadly sins in full operation, and it just gets in the way, and it's just one collider meeting another collider, meeting a resistance, meeting a pushback, meeting a pull in, meeting an empty hole that can never be filled, and all sorts of ways that our trauma and our wounds display themselves. We resist moving into any healthy choices because pride is in the way. Pride is in the way. Pride and arrogance, they go hand in hand. Being a know-it-all, having all the answers. Most people that are that way are the most lost. But the reality is we resist moving into healing ourselves because pride says, it's not me, it's somebody else. There's nothing wrong with me. They did it, or they're going to do it, or they did it, 15 lifetimes ago, and then they've got the karma, and it just happened to come out at me. There's always an excuse, always a resistance within the prideful ego, and pride only comes from ego. But a wise being chooses to come from a place of raw honesty, vulnerable transparency, that wants to be vulnerable and be transparent with the self and with the spirit, to operate out of truth, to live honest and integral lives, to seek and do whatever it is that will bring about a shift in awareness and a shift in insight, in behavior, and taking full responsibility in order to be able to trust others and find dependability and to come together in union, whatever that looks like, not just in a spouse or partner, but in union with other people, unity, to create something much more spectacular than dysfunction. So doing this inner work is really very much about calming the ego, arresting the ego, not in an unhealthy way, but by dealing with unhealthy parts of our thinking, our personality, our wounds, our health, being able to calm the ego and bring it into a balanced equilibrium, pulling it back into center point, where ego is an integrated part of you, but it does not consume you. And it certainly does not consume your thoughts, it doesn't consume your actions, and it does not consume your reactions. The ego is to become tempered and soothed when it knows spirit or when our souls are in charge. As in How Do We Rise Step 1, it was about bringing your soul forward and letting your soul choose and be in charge. To not have your mind run the show, to not have your beliefs run the show, to not have your emotions run the show, to not have your body and your lust and your desires run the show, not to be of anything false, not to be of anything synthetic or harmful, but to live through our souls and to come to a place where we so enjoy and revel in the unvarnished truth that comes from within, and that we can witness from all the truthful information that's coming from without and processing that swiftly, so that we don't move back into trauma, but we just allow information to come in and pass out, to come in and pass through us like we're watching a movie reel. You're just watching and letting it pass, watching and letting it pass, not attaching to it, but seeking that the truth of who we are, seeking the truth of who we came to be, seeking the truth of who we are now with our traumas, with our wounds, and then creating something so beautiful and so mindful from that which has been so painful. The ego also comes from the subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is oftentimes the reptilian mind. And it oftentimes is governed too much by the archon frequencies. And I'm not saying that that's true all the time, but I am saying that the subconscious mind is another layer that runs the show more than the conscious mind. We allow ourselves to be run by silent storylines that might be true, that might not be, oftentimes aren't true, that oftentimes have elements of truth in it. But the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, these places where the monkey chatter and the darkness are able to infiltrate, to place archon frequencies in us, to make us believe that we're not worthy, or that we're not powerful, or we're not good enough, or we're not beautiful enough, or handsome enough, or smart enough, or we don't have the best sense of humor, or we're deficient physically, or deficient whatever. We're just too sensitive. We're not sensitive enough. We're broken. We're damaged. We're, whatever. I mean, there's an endless array of negative thoughts followed by unhealthy emotions that are feeding off of us. And a lot of it is the archon frequencies that are within us that we haven't gotten on top of and said, hey, what are you doing here? That's not true. I am beautiful enough. I am smart enough. I am good enough. I am worthy. I am powerful. So I tend to try very hard to ask myself when I'm reacting to something or feeling like I'm going to react to something, is this ego running the show? And what inside of my ego is running the show? And trust me, I have it come up too, and I've really balanced my ego into a humble state in a lot of ways, but there are times it comes up, it rears its ugly head, and it just comes from that inner immaturity, that inner space where it's like needing something that I'm not getting, that I'm not providing for myself. And so what I do is I ask myself, okay, is ego in charge now? And if I listen, I can gain insight. When I dialogue with it, when I have just a little bit of conversation, little awareness, and definitely allowing that beautiful insight to come in. So if I'm reacting, well, then ego is running its agenda, and I am seeing another charge or something that needs clearing. Something inside of me that needs clearing, and not all the time is it me that needs the clearing. It could be that the world needs a clearing, and I've invited myself as a soul to clear it. But oftentimes we do have our own personal charge from our own personal wounds that still are an operation from our inner children who have not received everything or what they need emotionally to feel safe and feel secure and feel loved and feel cared about. Okay? So working with our ego, working with our inner child, and we have many inner children because you were child at 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4.5 and 4.2, and so there's a lot of facets of us that might get that do rear up from the subconscious unconscious place to voice and desire through the subconscious mechanisms, their ego or its ego and unhealed place within the wounds. Oftentimes our wounds are just so festering with infection, with emotional infection, and viruses. I call it viruses. Viruses is I'm not worth it. It's all hopeless. I am worthless because I'm, homosexual, I'm gay. And people are writing me at school about it. And they're bullying me. So I'm worthless. Or I have body dysmorphia and I know that I have breasts because I'm a girl, but I need to cover them and I need to put a bandage over because I can't stand to look at it because it's so traumatizing to me. We have a lot of places within us that got very damaged by the control matrix that we're living in. And we have to find ways to heal it. Most of us say we must heal in ways we really do. In other ways, we just simply must decide and choose a worthier embracement of ourselves and the moment. You see, we can go sit in a therapist's office and pay them good money, a lot of money, for years on end, and still never come away feeling worthy because we haven't made the choice to feel worthy. You say, oh, but it's easier said than done. Well, I know that. I absolutely know that. But I also know that there are ways to find worthiness pretty quickly. But the first step always is to choose, to make a decision and make a choice, to embrace a worthier outcome and point of view and observation of ourselves, other people, and the moment or experience that we're having. We could be in an experience and allow it to happen, work within it, shift it, try to shift it, into something that is not as painful or harmful. But when things happen, if we can just try to be a little bit observant and just stay clear enough to allow these experiences to be like puffs of smoke in our breath, or just gentle breezes that move through our lives, so that it's not locking in on us, it's not overwhelming us, it's not capturing us. Because when we allow these traumas to capture us and hold us in a vice grip, you know what's happening? Not only do you have archon frequency operating in you, but you are literally having your soul become fragmented, and therefore the archonic frequency, that energy that's sucking the life out of us, is being fed, number one, and is robbing us of our souls, number two. So here's the thing. When I go into, I want to clean my life up. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling overburdened. I've got a lot of things. I don't need a lot of things. I'm feeling just too much stuff in my life. And that stuff could be material items. That stuff could be thoughts. That stuff could be emotions. It could be memories. It could be all sorts of things. So my motto is, when in doubt, throw it out. So if I have too many clothes, I go into my closet and I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. That's automatic in the throw out pile. And then you have stuff, oh, I love that. Oh, gosh, oh, I couldn't live without that. Okay, I'm put that. Oh, I look great in that. That's the keep pile. And that's easy. But then you have these other parts of the closet. Well, I'm not sure. I kind of like it. It kind of looks good. The moment the doubt comes in, throw it out, because that item you're never going to miss. When you're going through and rummaging through the closet of your emotions or your memories or whatever, and doubt comes in, like, did that really happen? Or how that, throw it away. Throw it away. Let it go. Especially if it has to do with other people. If it has to do with trying to figure out another person, oh, good Lord, let it go. Because once you get somebody figured out, they'll come back and they'll do something else, and it'll just be an ongoing task of trying to figure out somebody else who's not healthy. It boils down to, that person is not healthy for me. And I am in doubt that this is going to work. Throw it out. Let it go. And I'm not saying that relationships are meant to be disposable or that people are meant to be dispensable. Or, it's just when it's a toxic environment and it's not providing the self-esteem or the sense of peace or a feeling like you've got somebody to depend on, or they're not honest, or they're really super critical and they're really ruining your self-esteem, etc. You know what? That's a doubt. Throw it out. Let it go, because you want to make room for something that is here to help you live your highest truth, live your highest purpose, and be the best person that you can be, and one that you choose and decide you want to help them to grow and expand and be the best that they can be. So it's really up to us in our choices. And our choices are to be, kind of concrete, based on wisdom and meaning and purpose and fruitfulness and loving awareness. If anything makes you stumble over too much, it's truly a doubt that can be tossed out. If it's causing you too many tears, it's not worth it. If it's causing you to feel angry or unsettled, it's not worth it. We don't need to live, whether it's with other people or it's in environments or it's within ourselves and our own thoughts, while it's anything that beats us down. There's no need for it. It's better to live a life alone with a few good friends that you get together with, and a lovely dog or lovely cat or, a goat or a horse or whatever that's a good friend to you, than to live with toxic people and toxic thoughts. And again, we're taught always to process and that life is challenging, and that it's difficult. And it takes us to a place where we polarize this or that, rather this or that, like I'm happy or I'm sad, or that was good or that was bad, or that person is right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and that person's wrong, or that person's a bad person, and needs to go to jail, and I'm a great person and I deserve everything. Whatever polarization does, it is so confining, it's so limiting, it is such a mind fuck. It really is. When we live in polarity, we are living in a total mind fuck, because polarity is not the truth in regards to there's only one or two. It's challenging or it's easy. It's a process or it's not. What we're here to do is we're here to expand ourselves into a broader picture of reality, which is really exceedingly expansive. And our thoughts, our minds, and our emotions, but really our perspectives, the way that we look at things, they are the prisons of duality. And we need not make anything hard or complicated. We can be a complex individual that doesn't have to have anything complicated. A complex individual has the capacity to simplify and keep things in a very steady equilibrium. You see, we can be so powerful as to choose the most vibrant of choices and then to let go and move on. Let go and move on. And some things are easier to let go of than other things. So I choose not to think I'm unworthy anymore. But in other words, I choose my worthiness. I choose my worthiness in thought, in my mindfulness towards myself, in the emotions that I feel about myself, and in the actions that I take to create a sense of worthiness within my own life, within my own mind, and within my own heart space. And the thoughts that make us feel unworthy, they'll come up. So we just choose a different thought that makes us feel worthy and wonderful. Out here on the ranch, Tracy, my ranch partner, my friend from childhood, and even myself at times, just so many things happen in a day. It's like, oh my God, because you're living out the elements and you're dealing with nature and animals and crops and geoengineering and, all sorts of things. And it's just like, you're so tired and you're building a house and you don't have a place to live and whatever. And it's just like, God, I hate my life. And what a terrible thing to say. What an absolutely harmful thing to think and to say. Instead of saying, wow, that was not a happy moment. I hate my life. So now I don't permit it at all. I'm working on absolutely owning, wow, that was a moment. That tested my mettle. That didn't feel good. Like yesterday, I was out in the goat and sheep pasture. And my ram, Rumi, the sheep, was chasing Nana Love, the goat, and trying to mount her. And yes, sheep and goats can actually have babies. And she was butting him, and she was running, and I went in to try and move him away from her. And so I defocused him, and I started petting him and loving on him, and putting a lot of good energy into my sheep to calm him down. And I, as usual, when I was done and he seemed calm and everybody seemed okay, I turned to walk out of the yard back into the chicken area, and because I've got large yards. Well, anyways, as I turned, he didn't want me to go, or whatever was in his mind. I don't know. I'm not a sheep. But he went back and he rammed me from behind, full throttle. It felt like I was hit by a car. And I flew into the barn, and I was injured, my arm, my hand, my neck, my back, my knee. And I just started to cry. And I was thinking to myself, wow, this not feeling really good right now. But instead of hating my life or hating the sheep or feeling doomed or going into some awful, space. It was just cry the pain that my body was in, walk out, get my breath, tell my friend Tracy what happened, because he was asking, he was very concerned, and then to just sit and go, well, I won't be seeing Rumi for the next couple of days because I'll be too sore, but I love him and he loves me. And this was a moment. I can't turn my back on my sheep while there's females in heat, but I certainly do love him and he loves me. And this was a moment we shared together that wasn't the most pleasant, but I'm going to survive. So where a lot of other people I'm getting in the gun, I'm shooting the sheep, So it's just really where we want to take our minds. Or I really hate my life because I can't even go near my sheep, but I always hug and love, and he's beating me up too, right? So it's really about making a choice. It's about having an inner dialogue. It's about having and creating inner self-love. It's about always maintaining insight and clarity. It's about allowing revelation to come through so that we can learn more about ourselves, because it's all about building up our ability to feel powerful, not powerful over people, but feeling powerful within ourselves. Revelation to be able to connect more to our spirituality, to our inner hearth, to create the space within our altar, in our heart, and the sacred places of our soul and our spirit that is revelatory, where we just continue to expand and grow, and making, while we're making all these wonderful and wiser choices for our lives. So we must do the inner work. And we're tossing our shadow stuff out like old underwear. That just needs too much darning. Like, you know what? That just is requiring so much right there. And it's not that I'm lazy and I don't want to procrastinate, but dude, I forgive you, right? I don't want to hold on to you. I want to move forward. So I'm going to just toss that one right outside. I'm going to just toss it into the river. I'm going to toss it into the ocean. I'm going to throw it up into the ethers and let it just be dissolved. There comes a time, like I said, when I ran away at 12, I ran away because my mother was extremely toxic. She had mental health problems. She was a pharmaceutical drug addict on opiates. It was a very horrible life that I was living as a child. And for many years, it just was something that haunted me. The feelings that I had, or the beliefs that I had that came from, it was like the outcropping of these experiences. I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm not pretty. All the different things that happen when you're in a abused child, with criticism, with mental anguish, with physical anguish, with a lot of yelling and screaming and put downs and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of neglect, a lot of mental and a lot of emotional and a lot of physical, psychological abuse. And it's just created belief systems. So I just got to a point when I was doing therapy, and I finally got to a point, it's like, I could sit here in this office for the rest of my life, and it's not even going to touch that moment when I say to myself, my mother sucked. If I sat down with my mother would say, I sucked. I didn't want her to have power over me anymore. I didn't want to be giving my power away to her anymore. I just decided to let go and move on. What was done was done. What they tried to etch in my mind and my soul was all archonic frequency. And if I continue to hover in that space, the archons won. They already got a hold of my mom. Now they want to get a hold of me. Why would I want that for myself? So it's old underwear that just needs too much darning. So Mom, I love you. I forgive you. You're my mother in this lifetime. Thank you for playing that role. Thank you for everything that I've learned by you playing that role. And I'm moving on. And part of doing that is to just love our inner children, who are the purity of our inner aspects. to love them more than hating our moms and hating our dads or our uncles or our grandparents or whomever, the schoolyard bully or the husband or the wife or, the endless, even the archons, even the predators, even the adversaries. We really need to love our inner children because they are the purity of our inner aspects. And it is a beautiful thing when we can love them wholly and solely. Solely, S-O-U-L-L-Y, solely. We love every part of us without judging it's right or it's wrong, it's good or it's bad, it's damaged or it's whole. We just love. And we love, and we love, and we set free all the parts of our innerness that takes us away from being the greatest character and our highest presence in our lives. We go to love. We want to heal our inner selves. And the way to do that is to go to love. It is to go to acceptance. It's to forgive those that harmed us. It's to forgive ourselves for being harmed. It's to forgive the children or the child or the maturity level within us that didn't know better, that didn't know how to handle certain things, that made decisions that weren't beneficial. It's to forgive our lives. And also, another part of it is, a lot of people don't look at, is that many people who have extraordinarily difficult lives, that have been put through things that many of us really don't want to talk about or hear about because it's so utterly terrible. A person that goes through significant trauma is actually, on a spiritual level, being allowed to become the master within, to master themselves, their thinking, their mindfulness, their emotionality, to be put so far in touch with their soul as to survive. It takes a soul to survive. To be put in touch with their will and their perseverance, to be put in touch with their greatness. There are many people that are given a lot of opportunities through suffering to become a master in their own lives, and therefore to eventually have enough presence to be a person that could step in front of humanity, even if it's a small crowd, even if it's on your Facebook, wherever, and present other options, present opportunities, present higher character, present an absolute connection to their soul that is in full operation, living inside of their lives. And when I talk about our souls, I'm not talking about religiosity. I'm talking about our souls being a very clear and inherent part of who we are, but denied, hiding in the shadows, being tucked away in the shadows, like our inner children are being tucked away in the shadows, in the deep dark recesses, while we're just trying to cope with our lives, cope with our daily momentum, with going to work and making money and paying bills and preparing food and taking care of our children and having hanky-spanky sex on Saturday night, and all these things that we try to get in and fit into a week because we're living by schedule rather than living by rhythm. So we've got to pull forward the inner child while the adult is present to say, hey, how you doing? What's up? How come you're so hurt right now? What's making you so angry? Oh, when that person said that? Really? So what did it touch in you? Oh, when Dad did that? No, I hear you. I totally understand. Yeah, that was a bummer moment, wasn't it? Yep. Would you like a hug? Seriously? Yep, you can hug yourself, guys. It's really okay. It's a beautiful thing. Want a hug? Great, give yourself a hug. You want to go out and hug a tree? Great, go out and hug a tree, as long as that inner child is with you. Pay attention. Be of witness. And most importantly, love. Be the frequency of peace. Stay calm. Seek joy. Smile every day, even if you don't feel like it. Just take a moment, look at the sun, look at the moon, look at the tree, look at the ladybug, and smile. Smile. And when you can, laugh. And feel alive with love. Always feel alive, with love. And whatever you can do, if it's taking a breath, if it's saying, I need to walk away for a few minutes to collect myself because I feel like I'm going to explode, then walk away and find calm in the insight and the clarity that you're gaining by understanding the other person, by having compassion for somebody else's position, for listening well to what they're saying instead of listening to speak. We must heal ourselves. We must learn very good communication skills. We must come together with our tribe who wants to heal themselves as well. We must nurture each other, because when we change and we upgrade ourselves, then guess what? The world changes too. And that ultimately is what we're all seeking in a collective measure, is to see a change happen in the world. But it's only going to happen when we each come together, each by ourselves and coming together, change what's inside of us, taking responsibility for our lives, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, the choices that we make. So this is step 2 in our rising. And I want to thank you for listening to me. I hope this helps. And this is Raven White Dove signing out today while rising in love. If you like what you hear, please be sure to like this video. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Subscribe to my channel and go ahead and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. See in the description how you can support my channel to grow, bringing you the best content that I can. Thank you so much for visiting and for your support. This is Raven White Dove signing out while rising in love.